the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome into the latest edition of the Spot Track Podcast. Brandon Kravitz here along with Mike Giannetti. This episode presented by Better Edge. The best way to beat the odds is by joining America's top betting exchange platform. The fact is, eliminating the house from the equation gives you the edge that you deserve. It's the future of sports betting, and we've got a promo code for you just to get you in the door. Sign up for the first time. You get $20 on the house just by using the promo code SPOTTRACK at sign up. That's betteredge.com or on the Better Edge app. Post July 4th episode, the NFL preseason starts at the end of the month. We have a rare July Hall of Fame game. The show Quarterback, this season 2 of Quarterback, just debuted on Netflix. I started streaming that last night. I started a mock draft recently. I'm fully scratched. The itch has arrived, and I am starting to scratch it. Mike, are you with me on this?
No, I'm pushing away like the plague right now. I'm still trying to enjoy the heart of baseball season, and we're knee deep in basketball stuff still. But I know it's coming. I just saw the Yahoo auto renewal for my fantasy league and things like that. So I'm being teased into it quickly here. But I'm not going to back down from an NFL conversation. We got to pay the bills over here.
Well, exactly. So we'll start with exactly that, because one of the big developments in that Quarterback show early on revolves around how misled Kirk Cousins felt throughout the whole process of signing with the Minnesota Vikings. And it is interesting to hear it from his perspective in a candid setting. They're talking to the guy at his house now in Georgia, and he's revealing how he felt about the whole situation. And he said that he would have been comfortable staying in Minnesota. They had offered him a deal, but they were only willing to go year to year with him. Atlanta was offering more of a long-term commitment, which is what he was looking for. But then he said, if I knew that both the Vikings and the Falcons were going to draft a quarterback early on, I would have just stayed in Minnesota because my family was happy there. Hasn't been much chatter lately around where he's going to play next, but it does seem like, based on everything that I've seen and everything that I've read, it's Michael Penix Jr. time. And when you watch Kirk Cousins in this documentary and how it started in Atlanta, it seemed like they were committed to him for the long haul. Even Raheem Morris during interviews was saying, this is a guy that we're committed to long term, and we just, hope to groom the young guy. What are you hearing? What do you think is going to happen and how this all plays out?
Well, first of all, and no discredit to the people making the production and Cousins himself, because I've heard him interview a bunch of times, and he's going to be just fine in front of a microphone over the next 10 years, in my opinion. So everybody's saying all the right things. What's not being said is that Kirk Cousins got himself $100 million out of this whole agreement. That's definitely something Minnesota was not offering. And by the way, we know what he's saying about Minnesota is true, because the exact same situation was offered to Sam Darnold this past March. Year to year, 1 year guarantee. And by the way, it's basically what he secured himself in Seattle anyway. So I think he's 100% giving us exactly how things broke down here from a financial standpoint in Minnesota to what was told to him in Atlanta. And it's one of the unique situations of having free agency be 2 months before a draft, right? It's the exact opposite in the NBA, right? Things happen with the draft, and that 100% funnels new conversations into the July 1st free agency, which is like an hour and a half later. So it's the uniqueness of the NFL offseason. It's why I think these kind of conversations become so polarizing, because you do have teams go 30, 40, $100 million invested on somebody and then have a situation in the draft kind of fall into their laps. There's nobody to blame here. All right. Should Atlanta have said, hey, if things break right, we're going to take a young quarterback because you're 37 and coming off an injury? Sure. But they didn't. And they look kind of like the bad guys here, and they look worse because they're handing a guy $100 million for 5 games of decent play. But there's no losers here. There's just not. Cousins in the twilight of his career. He got handed a huge contract that Minnesota was not offering, that no other team was offering. Does it stink that he's not going to be able to play football right now? Yeah, it stinks. But he wasn't good enough to even make himself a part of this conversation in 2025. And the injury was a part of that, and his poor play was a bigger part of that. So it's Penix season. I somewhat applaud the Falcons for overly being aggressive in 2024 to put themselves in the situation, because the opposite side of this, Brandon, is we're wondering if Kirk Cousins can make it 4 weeks in 2025, right? It's not about who should be starting. We wouldn't even have that answer. So I applaud them for taking this position, which is the biggest position in all of sports, and throwing as much money and assets as humanly possible at it in a time where they needed to kind of rebuild on the fly. They've been aggressive defensively. They've been aggressive with weapons. They're going to give Drake London a massive contract here in the next couple of weeks, in my opinion. And they're going to back it up with the biggest backup quarterback contract in the history of this league. And unfortunately, that's what Kirk Cousins is looking at in 2025.
Well, I think you nailed it with they don't go into much detail nearly as much as we go into in terms of how much he banked.
The elephant in the room.
Exactly. The decision that he made. I'm sitting there watching it with my wife and she goes, "Oh, I feel so bad for him." I'm like, don't feel too bad.
Yeah, I wish I could have like a Spot Track disclaimer pop up on Netflix. Like, oh, by the way, he's good.
Oh, that would be so dynamic. That would just be great. And I mean, look, if you're looking at it through, I thought Raheem Morris was interviewed during that whole portion of that storytelling, and I thought a lot of it came out like BS. Well, we just wanted to park the youngster on the bench and then let him get seasoned. And I think if you're looking at this pie in the sky, you bring in Kirk Cousins, you sign him to a big contract, and in an ideal world, you get 2 great years out of Kirk Cousins, and there's no way you can play the young guy. It's just, it never works out that way, especially if you invest in a quarterback inside of the top 10. So probably repeating things that we've already said numerous times over the last couple of years, but we knew it was going to play out this way.
But is it really that much of a miss by Atlanta? It's not, right? Because
financially, it feels like a big miss.
I don't know. I mean, they were rolling Desmond Ridder out there, right? And they made way bigger mistakes than Kirk Cousins, in my opinion, because it's not our money. Okay.
But imagine they use that. It's not about spending the money. It's about what you could have used that money to put that towards something else. You could have purchased an entire O-line.
Let me put it this way. They could have been the big winners for Deshaun Watson, because they were the other team, right? They were the team that Cleveland had to go Godfather offer at to get out of that conversation. So they missed on that one, which was a phenomenal miss. They missed on Desmond Ridder because that was plan B there. They missed on everything else they've done post Matt Ryan, including keeping Matt Ryan too long, by the way. Yeah. And now they've backed their train into what? A little extra cash on what you just laid out, which is Kirk Cousins on a 1 to 2 year deal, drafting his heir apparent immediately, which sounds aggressive, but you're right. If everything goes right, Penix starts immediately and they just have to find somebody to take the money off of Kirk Cousins. Well, that didn't work out because Kirk Cousins got hurt and didn't play himself. Let's put it in a perfect scenario though. Let's put it in Cousins is on 2 for 100. Penix is on a 4-year +1 rookie contract. And Cousins is now unbelievably motivated to be the best version of himself at 36 years old. And he holds off. He thwarts the Penix pressure for 2 years. And he's the quarterback in 2025. And then they can freely walk away from Cousins after this, or trade him with 2 years of term left. And they get something back for Cousins next offseason and hand the keys to Penix Jr. then. The best scenario, would have been that. It didn't work out that way. Cousins just sort of teetered off and fell off a cliff here. And now nobody wants him. And it's an albatross contract for 1 season. We've just seen way worse in the past 2-3 off seasons happen. This is sort of small potatoes in the dead cap world. And it's at the quarterback position, which everybody should be able to tolerate right now. If this was a free safety making $40 million to sit on a bench, we'd be losing our minds, but we're not, because we all think Penix Jr. is the guy. And that would have been the case no matter what. So it's kind of a win-win. It's
crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how much I feel like Russell Wilson's contract, that changed the mentality of this sort of thing. You used to not speak this way about this much dead cap on your salary cap.
Yeah, you're right. And then teams like the Rams and Denver last year have really kind of changed the conversation. And the conversation is being allowed to change, Brandon, because the salary cap is increasing so much. It's a very different world with basketball and football right now in that regard. Okay. And certainly, baseball and hockey, which are just in their own kind of tiers. But, there's major salaries in basketball butting up against the cap that's not really going to increase as much as those teams want it to. And the exact opposite is happening in football, to the point of where they're allowing for recklessness to happen, which is kind of fun because it's not really trickling down to the middle class like we all want it to work. We can get into socioeconomical, economics on a whole grander level there. But at this position specifically, you're being allowed to take chances and make mistakes. And that's what this was. So you're right. 5 years ago, I am killing the Atlanta Falcons and I'm crushing Denver, even though Denver already found their replacement in Bo Nix. It's just not the way of the world anymore. And we've got teams, I'm looking right now in 2025, we've got the 49ers with 92 million of dead cap, the Eagles with 77 million of dead cap, the Seahawks with 67 million. Those are top 5 dead cap teams. I think they're all playoff teams. So I'm not going to gawk at any of that right now because it's kind of the way of the world.
Well, good for you for being flexible. You taught me dead cap was bad 5 years ago, and I have remained rigid in that. But good for you.
Well, one more thing on this, Brandon, because it's only allowable and feasible and doable and winnable because of the way that the system works, that you can convert salaries, that you can use void years and dummy years, and you can kind of turn this into a soft salary cap. Buyer beware, because Roger Goodell has come out, we talked about it a little bit, and said that might be a moniker that won't be able to be used in the next CBA. And if that changes and you're not allowed to convert and you're not allowed to put these dummy years onto the books and it becomes an actual hard salary cap, we're right back to 5 years ago, Mike Giannetti, which is you can't make these mistakes anymore. Things are going to change, and the quarterback position, financially speaking, will be devalued because of it, because you won't see teams make these big swing Hail Mary tosses at contracts like this. So
it sounds to
to
me like you like the new world of it. If you had a vote, if Goodell called you and asked for your opinion.
I like it because it matches the sentiment of the game itself, right? If you don't have a quarterback and you don't have a veteran quarterback for 6-7 years, you're kind of dead. So you might as well pay those players along with that sentiment. But if that changes and we have to devalue Lamar Jackson, right? We're instead of extending him right now and blow out the years for salary cap purposes, which is what Baltimore's planning on doing. But if they don't have the ability to do that with the soft cap situation, I don't know if that's a conversation. So it aligns with the nature of the game. But if that's something that owners as a whole want to change, they'll get their way because we know how this works.
Let's talk some Major League Baseball. Midsummer Classic right around the corner. Home Run Derby appears to be set as well. Ronald Acuna Jr., Cal Raleigh, O'Neill Cruz, James Wood, Byron Buxton, and the newly added Junior Caminero is in there as well from the Tampa Bay Rays. The winner gets $1 million from the Home Run Derby. It's a nice chunk of change for an exhibition event. Who does that help the most in terms of their current salary? Who financially needs to win the Home Run Derby?
I didn't see that question coming. First of all, it's an awesome list. If you are a decent follower of this sport, that's kind of like the who's who of up and comers with these young teams maybe aspiring to get to that next level. I think it's Cal Raleigh still LaRue's right now. I mean, 36 home runs heading into this week. That's just he's kind of the small guy jumping ahead of all the big guys right now in terms of where this league is. So I think he's the name to watch, but he's got himself a pre-arbitration extension already. So I think the easy answer here is Caminero or James Wood, who are both on basically year one pre-arbitration contracts. They'll get a really nice boost in that pre-arb pool at the end of the season, something that the teams have to kind of pay into now every year. So they will get their chunk, but those will be the players that, if they win this competition, will have earned more on July 13th than they were set to make in the entire 2025 season on a pre-arb salary. So if that's the story you're looking for, those are the guys you should be rooting for.
Or betting on, however you want to look at this.
Yeah.
I really think that if we're going to say draft this guy higher because he's in a contract year in whatever sport it is you play fantasy in, why would you not put more weight into somebody that actually wants to win $1 million? With that is not a small chunk of change. We're talking about a real payment here. And for a guy that's not making Ronald Acuna Jr. money, that but can hit home runs like these other individuals that are in the contest. I think looking that way is a pretty sharp look.
There's something to rooting for the hometown kid, though. You know what I mean? Like Acuna in Atlanta. There's something. I don't know if I'm ever going to forget that Bryce Harper one in Washington. That was
incredible.
That was must-see TV. He's wearing the USA bandana. It just everything about that just absolutely soared to the next level. So if Acuna is going to put on a show like that, I'm kind of rooting for that myself.
I'm a little bit disappointed that Pete Alonso not going to take part in the home run derby. That's become his event. He's like the Joey Chestnut of the home run derby.
I know his agent got in his ear on this one, and I kind of agree with it because what he just went through this offseason sucked. You know, he ended up exactly where he wanted to be on a good price for 1 year. He's going to opt out. And barring a Mets extension midseason here, which is just not Scott Boras like, so it's not going to happen. He's got to kind of keep his ducks in a row here, right? He's got to put all of his weight into the 2025 Mets and the 2026 offseason. So I get it. You know, you can't go out there and extend yourself because I know this sounds stupid because it's a sandlot sport, but this is a grueling event. I mean, to go out
really
there
is. I really don't think it's silly to say that. It's the time clock now. It's not the leisurely 10 outs that it used to be.
No.
These guys are going through a rigorous exercise in trying to hit the ball over the fence.
Watch these guys take their sips of Gatorade during their timeouts, and that's all you'll need to know. They are beaten down from these swings to take these big ass swings for 2 minutes on intervals here, because they're also warming up in bullpens for 10 minutes just to get themselves ready and get their muscles ready. So yeah, it's like a big relief appearance 3 times over, 3 times in an hour, you know what I mean? Which is unheard of in this day with the science we know. So I'm not going to go out there and try to make the home run derby woke, but it's definitely, not something you should probably do every single season. So I'm going to give Pete a break on this one.
I hear people talk about the home run derby drop off often. I still haven't actually seen or sought out the statistics behind it, but it does make sense.
Yeah.
That you hit fewer home runs after the derby than you did pre-derby in terms of a per plate appearance basis. Because you're changing your swing, because you're putting all of that, you're taxing your body in that way. And if there are numbers, I think it's just something people say. I don't know that the numbers back that up or not. But if they do, you have to take that into account because it is such a rigorous event. So as crazy as that sounds, fascinating find by you in terms of the all-star list of the guys that are actually on the all-star teams in the American and National League. 7 of the top 10 payroll salaries were left off of the 2025 team. Is this a warning sign to clubs across the country, or is this just a symbol of a changing of the guard, that we have this new crop of talent in Major League Baseball and the Mike Trouts of the world just aren't as valuable as they once were?
Yeah, I only did that list to get Anthony Rendon back out there because that's just the contract we shouldn't forget. But it's a mix. It's always a mixed bag. I don't think this is really that big of a one-time anomaly. This is kind of the going rate. Now, look, Soto is certainly a conversation we could have. Ohtani, by the way, probably should be on this list, but because of the way his deferred salary works, his payroll salary is $28 million. He's in the top 20, not the top 10. So there's ways to poke holes in this, but yeah, look, the Trout contract with him getting hurt every year is becoming an albatross. That is the story of Anthony Rendon on that same Angels squad. Garrett Cole injured to start the year. Altuve signed a re-up extension, which is questionable, but the Houston Astros are great. And Glasnow and his injuries, another conversation to be had in terms of the Dodgers and all of their pitching injuries. So I don't know. It's kind of the going. Maybe the conversation is every 30 plus year old in Major League Baseball just going to have injury histories now going forward? Maybe that's it, right? Because everybody on this list has had one, with the exception of Zach Wheeler, who kind of had his in his early 20s and then just kind of Supermaned himself into this ridiculous decade run of being the best pitcher in baseball from a consistency standpoint. So I don't know. It just seems like it's a grueling sport. It's a marathon sport. We'll see how that impacts the next CBA discussions. But yeah, to have, 7 of 10 not in your big mid-season event, it's probably not great because these are massive names for the most part that are missing this event.
And a lot of pitchers on the list. It's interesting because pitchers are as valuable to wins and losses in baseball as quarterbacks are in football, yet they get injured, especially the older ones like running backs. And so you kind of have this convergence of, we have to pay you because we can't win at a serious level unless we have elite pitching. Yet these guys, when they get older, they just drop like flies. It's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's definitely the biggest issue that needs to be looked at going forward, because if you're going to change the pay structure, are you going to completely wipe out these big contracts in doing so and make it an actual rookie wage scale type game? I know that's what owners would love to do, but it's definitely the biggest battle right now, because you're right. We're gonna log on next Monday and Tuesday to these events and see a hell of a lot of young talent that's super exciting, but hasn't been paid yet. And if you're watching them thinking these guys are going to make a boatload of money, I think baseball itself is looking at it exactly the opposite way. Is just how long can we ride them out and not have to pay them before the next crop comes in? And that's, I think, the balance that's being struck, which is going to lead to an absolute guaranteed, Rob Manfred already said it out loud, lockout in December of 2026.
I can't wait to dig into the future of Paul Skeens. That deserves its own episode one day. Let's talk some NBA. We'll start with my Orlando Magic, making one of the more obvious moves of the offseason, locking up Paolo Banchero to a 5-year extension worth $239 million, but up to $287 million if he reaches All-NBA status, wins a Defensive Player of the Year. Don't see that one in the cards, or an MVP, which is more likely. The question here is, do we ever see players turn this down? I feel like the answer is no. This is perhaps the biggest formality in sports right now, that these guys that can sign the rookie max extension always do. Are there exceptions to the rule out there, or is that the case?
This would have been a lot harder question to answer until yesterday when Chet Holmgren essentially did that, Brandon. He essentially took the max at his 25%. And we're still trying to find the actual details. That's coming soon. Keith Smith's all over this crap, like within hours of me asking for it. But Chet Holmgren essentially took the 25% rookie extension max, but did not build in the full language to make it a designated rookie extension to get to 30%. It sounds like the max it can go for Chet is 26%, 1% more than what he just signed for. So, yes, we are seeing players, especially on the big teams like OKC, sort of understand that we can't go all the way up and keep this thing together for even 3 years, let alone 5. And that appears to be the line in the sand right there. SGA did get his full max extension. It sounds like all the way up with the language. Chet took a little bit less. So now in OKC, Jalen Williams, the good Jalen Williams, is next up to get that extension. I wouldn't be surprised if it looks a hell of a lot like Holmgren's, which is we're gonna max it out on the base level, but it's not going to be maxed out with language to go all the way up to 30, because we're reserving that space for SGA, and we're happy making $250 million underneath him, but not a dollar more at that point in time. So maybe that's the start. Maybe this is the new model. And of course, it's Sam Presti, right? Starting the new trend to sort of understand how the second apron stuff can work with a young core that needs to develop into massive contracts. And I'm sure Orlando is watching very carefully over there.
So what you're saying is that this is something that general managers are looking at and trying to perhaps press this contract a little bit. It's not something that we see players often say no to.
They're not going to say no to the contract, that's for sure. But the back and forth of just how strong the language is in that contract to make it even worth more if they're all NBA, if they're defensive players of the year, this stuff you're talking about there, that's the stuff where there's some wiggle room. There's some negotiations. And like I said, Presti's gotten Holmgren to come down on those a little bit. Banchero didn't. He took the max, but I think we can look at Banchero and put him in the SGA conversation in Orlando, right? He's sort of the focal point piece, and maybe Suggs has already taken his discount. Franz Wagner took his discount a little bit with that language. We'll see what else has to happen to keep this band together, assuming that Orlando can kind of grow into that OKC model a little bit over the next couple of years.
Well, and that's going to be the key is, can this team be as good as they've set themselves up to be? Their starting five is locked in through 2029 at a minimum. Are they now one of the most, if not the most, pot committed teams to their starting lineup in the entire NBA?
They are, but it's the first iteration of this, right? So it's still super playable for the next couple of seasons. And then it gets wonky. And then you start having to trade off pieces one or two at a time, like we're seeing in Boston and Denver here over the past couple of off seasons, just to sort of stay afloat. And by the way, that's coming for OKC. Everything I just said about the Thunder isn't going to exclude them from that conversation. And if you just want to, flash forward even to next offseason, my guess is there's going to be big conversations on Lou Dort, Isaiah Hartenstein, players like that who have club options that Presti's probably going to have to punt on just to keep those big three together, despite the fact that there's been some concessions from a financial standpoint.
Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. We've got some breaking news this morning in the world of basketball. Devin Booker extended as well. 2 years added onto his deal worth $145 million. That's 72.5 per year. What are we doing here? I like Devin Booker, but this feels crazy.
Well, first of all, I got to be that guy and say that the 145 only happens if the salary cap maxes out over the next 3 years, which we do not expect it to. In fact, we're hearing quite the opposite coming down from the league, which is we got a 10% growth this year. The league has said expect a 7% growth next year. And then they're telling us it might go down to 5 2 years from now in 2027. And we're going to kind of hold it at that 5 rate going forward from there, which sounds like what the league is trying to push for, which is a little bit more of a salary cap smoothing versus maxing it out at the top level, which is kind of what I was foreshadowing at the top of the show here, where the NFL is doing that, maxing out and saying, deal with it, pay your players. And the NBA is sort of saying, hey, we got to protect our owners a little bit here because it's percentage based, right? So if the cap is here, every rookie extension, every veteran extension is 30% of that number. And it sounds like 10% now, but maybe not 10% again for the foreseeable future. So yes, Devin Booker's contract could be 2 for 45 in 3 seasons when it starts. I think it's looking more like 2 for 135, which is still ungodly money for a player 3 years from now, which is when that would kick in. But I don't think these numbers we're seeing for SGA, for Chet, and for and certainly for Booker way down the road are going to get to the levels we think they are, because the NBA is starting to dial things back a little bit, which is like something you and I have talked about. When does that bubble actually burst?
It has to at some point.
Instead of it actually bursting, the league is just going to dial back how big that salary cap is and kind of restrict just how big these contracts get going forward.
So that's that 145, the quote unquote 145. We'll see what that actually turns into.
Yeah.
None of those dollars are added on to what he's currently making. That is when he gets to that point in his contract.
Yeah. And that's really important to note too. It's not like the NFL where, somebody signs an extension and it impacts today's salary cap because of the signing bonus, because of proration, things like that. Really no other league operates that way, right? Than the NFL. So when you talk about an NBA extension, it's a tack on to whatever exists now. Same thing in the NHL, same thing in Major League Baseball for the most part. So this is kind of that John Wall extension from way back in the day with Washington, where they didn't have to do anything with John Wall, and yet they gave him 2 extra years. And Houston ended up buying out those years and making him sit at home and watch the games because they didn't want him to be on the court and get hurt. So I don't think it'll get to that point with Devin Booker. It seems like it's now Devin Booker's team again in Phoenix. And we'll see just how good, that turns out to be with Jalen Green and some of the new pieces. But yeah, this is an extension that didn't have to happen, but it's a gesture of good faith and putting money into an asset that should be tradable even at that point in time in 3-4 seasons.
And I hadn't thought about John Wall in a while. So nice flashback right there.
I never forget him. He's one of the goats.
He is. That is content gold for you. Jokic contract delay. That was one of the big topics yesterday across the sports world. It feels like perhaps the biggest non-story out there Jokic eligible for a 3-year, $206 million extension this summer, but he's going to be eligible for 4 years, 286 the following year. So waiting doesn't feel like a jab at the Nuggets to me. It feels like I'm just going to wait for more money. Is that how you read this as well?
It is. And it's kind of a weird situation, right? Because it's really just waiting for one more year to your contract based on how things are allowed to be added onto. So the context here is Jokic himself and what his age will be. He'll be 36 when this 4-year contract ends, which, you know, in the grand scheme of things, LeBron has played way more. Curry's playing way more. Durant's going to play way more than 36. I just don't think anybody expects Jokic to play that much longer than 36. And by the way, that might be the real conversation here is by waiting till next summer, signing the 4-year extension, putting himself on the books guaranteed through age 36, heading to 37 years old. It may be him telling us that's where I'm going to stop, because I think we're all waiting for that moment with him. He just seems to be a guy that loves the sport, but isn't going to overdo it. And that might be the real conversation to be having is by tacking on the 4 years here to what he's got and carrying through 2031. It may be him telling us that's when I'm done playing basketball in the NBA in America. So get ready for that. But I don't know that we'll hear him say that out loud just yet.
Well, I think that it going that way wouldn't surprise anybody out there. Let's get to our Better Edge bet of the week. You are on a Mets hot streak right now. You have taken me down 2 weeks in a row, just betting on your. I find them hard to figure out. You keep nailing them on the right day, and yet they still find themselves in first place in the division. So who knows? But our teams play a doubleheader today, so it feels pretty obvious what direction we have to go here. We're about an hour and a half as of the recording of this episode away from game 1 of a doubleheader for the Orioles and the Mets, and then game 2 at 5:00 on the East Coast. So I'll double up and take my O's 2 times today.
Whoa.
And you can have your Mets. The second pitcher, by the way, I believe undecided for you guys. So
yeah, I'm looking myself actually.
I got Morton in the early. I feel better about the early game than the late game, but I'm just going to go complete homer here and just take the Orioles 2 times.
All right. I'm definitely taking the Mets, but let's add something to this, because I think the collective under on both of these games should also be there. I just think it's one of those times. We're at All-Star week, right? It's a good time to take unders in Major League Baseball right now. It's also a really good time to take a couple of home runs, because balls are flying out of the ballpark right now in that mid-July weather with storm season kind of all around us. So if you're watching baseball right now and you're seeing some balls just absolutely get cranked out of ballparks, it's a really nice time to go to Better Edge and take a couple players that jack the ball out today, which is super fun to do if you don't do that on a regular basis. So the under on this 2-game set plus the Mets to win them both, I'm in. Let's do it.
Apparently you have not watched a lot of my
I know
Sagano this year for the Orioles, because he'll give them up to you. So I don't know that I can get there in that second game.
Well, you're getting the over, so you get the over. Go for it.
No, I know. I'll take the over in both. These are 2 lineups that feel like they've come alive a bit. Do us a favor, go ahead and subscribe and rate the pod that you're enjoying right now. Make sure to visit spottrack.com for all the latest in the sports contractual world. Also use the promo code SPOTTRACK over at betteredge.com or on the Better Edge app for $20 at sign up. Go O's. Till next time, Mike.
Yep.